Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and today is patch note day, and the patch notes are super big. They are absolutely gargantuan. So, we're just gonna blaze through this as quick as we can. They do note that the battle balance section is in a separate post, which I have noticed a lot of people have not bothered reading, but we will definitely take that on at the end of the video, but we will look at them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and blow through all of the other information and go from there. So we of course have the Ogre Kingdom's mercenary recruitment rework. I'm not really going to spend any time on this because we obviously featured this very heavily in the last major video, but now you can get more types of units. You can have up to 3 mercenary units per army instead of only 1, and the units that you have access to depend on the level of the ogre camp that is nearby you, and also they replenish every 5 turns. Cool, great, awesome, cool. But this is also quite nice because it means that if you use the alliance system to also ally with ogres, if you really want to, you could have 7 ogre units per army, which is pretty wild. But you could also just have, 3 ogre mercenaries and then allies from other factions as well. They do have a developer note here that they're aware that Zhao Ming's benefits don't really work with this system, so that's something they're going to be looking to fix in the future, which is great. They're aware of it. That's all that matters. So they'll take care of that sooner than later. Bounties. While we plan a large rework for the Ogre Kingdoms in the next DLC, alongside an extensive mercenary contracts feature for Gold Flag Man-Eater, because they're doing that, they felt that the old contract system needs an update, so they've now made it into bounties. So it's renamed to avoid confusion. It has a very sexy new UI that looks a lot more better and interesting. Bounties no longer require you to accept them, so they're always active. It's just if you go do it, you did it, and you get your reward. You don't have to accept it and then go do it, which is nice. Furthermore, this is a change that I was pretty heavily recommending, and I'm really, really glad that they've done it, which is that if a bounty expires, either because you ran out of time, you successfully completed it, or the objective is no longer possible, then it'll receive like a little completed, or it'll be removed in some fashion, and then on the next turn, you'll get a brand new one. So you don't have to wait. It's not like you get a new set of bounties every 10 turns. Once you get your first wave of bounties, as they are completed or removed for whatever reason, they will be replaced next turn with a new one, which is really, really good because that means you can actually achieve significantly more of them. I do still have a couple of issues with the bounty system. The biggest 2 things for me are that A, I feel like players should have the ability to dismiss bounties that they don't want. So, for instance, if you're playing a campaign, you may end up being that you're allies with Queek Headtaker, and you may say, well, I don't want a bounty about killing Queek Headtaker because he's my ally and I intend on maintaining that alliance. So I'm not going to do this, and I don't want it sitting here for 30 turns taking up a slot when I'm not going to do it. So I really think they should add in just a little X mark or something, or a little bar that you can click on that dismisses any bounties you don't want to do. So then the next turn you get new ones. The other thing that I would really recommend is currently the bounty rewards are pretty much the same as they were, which is that whenever you get a bounty, you are guaranteed to get treasury bonus, you're guaranteed to get diplomacy bonus, and then you get a kind of a miscellaneous bonus. And the miscellaneous can either be meat, it could be a buff like camp growth, it could be a buff that has to do more with more faction-wide effects, or it can be an item or an ancillary. So my opinion that I feel very strongly about is that they should update it where the item or ancillary is a guaranteed reward. So anytime you complete a bounty, you should get money, diplomacy buff, a random bonus like meat or some kind of faction effect, or an army buff or a buff for your faction leader, and then the 4th guarantee should either be an item or an ancillary. So those guys you can attach onto your characters. And whether to me, it doesn't really matter about like, they can have their own internal system to determine like what kind of item or ancillary, but that is something that I would really, really heavily recommend. The fact that you don't get a guaranteed item is just like, when I look at these, some of them, it's just like, yeah, they're okay, but like items and ancillaries, I think are those bonuses where it's like, oh, like if this one was Bitterstone Mine gives you these 3 things, and then it also gives you a Talisman of Protection, you know, like a ward save item, I'm going to go, oh, okay, well, that's like actually worth my effort, versus just this, unless I'm just super desperate for money and I just happen to be right next door to Bitterstone Mine. I don't see myself going out of the way to do this. So I really would recommend them adding in that last kind of tier of a reward. New magic items. This is really, really exciting. But so there are 16 new generic items. And then there's also a selection of new unique items, which I think are actually part of the 16 number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, no. So it's 16 new generics and then 6 new uniques that is available to certain factions. So this is pretty awesome. Really, really excited to see all of these and find them. So the 6 magic items with unique effects, the only one they've really shown us so far is Mad's Map, which gives you plus 50%, which is so crazy, plus 50% campaign movement, but there's a random chance that at the start of your turn, the army or character it's equipped to will teleport to a nearby region to basically represent that they got lost for a little bit. So it's pretty good, but it has a potential downside. But we also see we've got the Helm of the Dreiska, we've got the Death Singer, the Doom Singer, Mad's Map, Idol of Zak-Alug, Aldred's Casket of Sorcery. So pretty exciting. I also really, really like the flavor that if you get Death Singer or Doom Singer, they have elven names. I do think it's a little weird that it's only if the High Elves get it. I feel like it should be if any of the elven factions get it. So like if the Dark Elves, High Elves, or Wood Elves get it, they should know it by its true elven name. Whereas if any of the other factions get it, they know it by its kind of more generic names. But yeah, this looks really good. The thing that I'm particularly excited about is it looks like the vast majority of these new items are range oriented. So I think that's actually a pretty good and solid addition, because frankly, the current item list we have now, there are virtually 0 items for ranged buffs among the generic item lists. Like some of the faction specific items have some bonuses to range fire, but considering the amount of generic lords and heroes and even legendary lords that have ranged attacks, there were so few items that benefited that aspect of the character. So really excited to track down all these items and see what they do. There are some really, really cool ones, like the Sky Titan string sounds really cool. A Dragonfire handgun, the Aspo, like these look really, really fun. I'm really excited to track them all down. But yeah, really cool stuff. And they do mention that for the unique items, if you find them, there's basically when you do find them, they drop in addition to another item, which is really, really, really cool. But all of these items are accessible as post-battle loot for all factions, with the chance of the item dropping depending on its rarity, of course, which is great, awesome, cool. The only exception is the Idol of Zak-Alug, which is greenskins only. Let's see. They do note that they use the term ancillaries, a catch-all term, which, to be fair, is very confusing, because in-game ancillaries is a specific term that refers to a specific thing, so they definitely should not use that term going forward. But yeah. Research overflow. We've always presented the research rate as a percentage and the time required to research technologies in the term number terms for ease of understanding. However, under the hood, you actually generate a certain number of research points every turn while actively researching the technology. The base amount of points generated is 100, so 150% research rate means you generate 150 points. Technologies are all defined by a total point cost needed to complete them. We simply shorthand this as a turn counter. So what's the issue? Let's say you're recruiting a tech that requires 4 turns, which needs 400 research points. You also have a 30% bonus to research, which allows you to get 130 research points per turn. So on turn 1, you get 130, then 260, 390, and then 400. Well, this doesn't actually save you any time, as under the previous version, the extra 120 points you generated on turn 4 would be immediately lost. So you get 10, and then the other 120 points are just gone forever. Our new system, however, when you finish researching technology with surplus, those extra points will be stored in your tech tree. This surplus will then automatically be applied to the next technology you research. Oh, that is so good. That is such a good fix. So this is something I've known about for quite some time, and it's really, really good to see that they finally fixed it. And they are also providing you more tooltips that let you see under the hood. I always hated that the old system insinuated it did this, and then it just didn't, which was really frustrating. Because, like, I knew when I would be playing campaign that if you didn't have at least an additional 100% research rate, then research rate was useless unless it was like a really long research time for a tech. But most techs in the game are like anywhere from like 3 to 4 turns. So it used to be that to get a 1 turn off, you needed to have at least 100%. So, you know, having a bunch of heroes running around, using the steel tech along with your various buildings and upgrades to try and get to at least that 100% bonus, because without it, you literally got nothing out of it. So this is going to make it where every single buff that you can get your hands on that improves your research bonus actually helps immediately, instead of only helping once you've accumulated enough of them. So great fix, and also really nice to see the shout out to the Jerry Ruff, who's had a mod that did a very, very similar thing. Movement range display. We've reworked how campaign movement range is displayed in an effort to improve clarity when moving and switching stances. Previously, movement range was shown as percentages, but it often represented a numerical value under the hood. To clarify this, movement range is now displayed as a numerical value, while bonuses will still be presented as percentages. This change should make entering and exiting stances much more understandable, especially when calculating the movement range you need. Yeah, this is a much needed fix, because the system was deliberately misleading. Because it used to be that when you would mouse over a stance, it would say, oh, you need at least 50% of your movement left to go into this stance. And that wasn't true. That was a lie. What it was actually telling you was that you needed 50 movement points when entering a stance. So you could actually be like significantly less than 50% and still enter a certain stance because you had the movement points, or you could be in the opposite scenario where you would think that you had enough movement to go into a stance, and then would look at it and would say you couldn't. So this is a really good fix, where now when you mouse over it, it tells you just the flat numbers you're at. So it says, okay, you're at 174 over 120, so you have 62% remaining. And now the stances say, hey, you need 50 points to do this, and show those 50 points being marked off. So that's a really good change. Disciple Army Confirmation Bonus. So when you're playing Slaanesh, if you accidentally click the Summon Disciple Army button, it now gives you an ability to confirm it instead of just automatically doing it. That's really good. I cannot tell you. I think every single time I've tried a Slaanesh campaign, I always end up doing this, where I accidentally click the Disciple Army button because, like, of a misclick, or I'm trying to remember what it does, or I don't remember why I would click on it, but for some reason I always end up clicking on it at least once near the start of my campaign, and it would spawn an army, and I'd be like, God damn it, I didn't want to do that. So that's good. Battle, new Graveguard, woohoo! So, yep, we got new Graveguard with halberds. They look super duper duper good. I love their kind of, they're like spiky poleaxe looking halberds. They look really good. They look pretty much based on their 6th edition version, because back in 6th edition you could have Graveguards with halberds. And there's like a really, there are some old pictures you can find of, I think they were metal minis back then. But yeah, super awesome, great, cool. Yep, stylized after the 6th edition miniatures. They wield Bonardeeks to now bring down large enemies. Great, cool, awesome, wonderful. They look great. Vampire Count fans rejoice. You now have a much higher tier anti-large infantry unit. So cool, great. Battle map tree cluster update. Hell yeah, look at all those improved maps. Woo boy. So they've improved quite a few maps in different terrain types. And here they give some examples. So they kind of show like the Deadwood Forest. Wow, that looks so much better. The Arid Shrine. The old one. Oh no, the old one pretty much, yeah, not great. And now there's like just better use of it. Yeah. The forests are just now in like actually interesting places, and they're also large enough to be actually useful, which is great. Modding. We made a number of changes to our Lewis scripting files to enable modders to edit them without requiring a full rewrite. While this won't affect most noticeable gameplay, it enhances compatibility between various mods. We'd like to give a big thank you to Chaos Robbie, All Is Dust, and Rox, who reached out to us requesting these changes. Chaos Robbie is the GOAT. He's made so many great mods that I, although I don't use them often when I'm streaming, I use them a lot when I'm like playing by myself and just like having fun. They also fixed an issue for modders where they used to be capped out at only 255 provinces. They have resolved that limitation, so they should be able to have even more provinces for people that want to have even more intricate worlds, which is super great, awesome, cool. Bug fixes. Fixed some various crashes. Campaign. Fixed all sorts of little notable issues. The Shukagen Lord of Yin now can have, when they get the Enfeebling Foe buff, they now get 4 casts of it instead of just 1 to standardize it with the others. Fix some various other issues. Let's see. Campaign AI should now spam campaign unique units to make them appear more rare. Adjusted Nakai's Wild-Eyed skill to be more coherent or in line with Croxor Ancient stuff. Fix some inconsistencies with the Gorbel. Occupying the Oak of Ages for the Ogre Kingdoms now does what it's supposed to do instead of just giving you a regular settlement. Cool. Fix some other bunch of just little UI things. Not too worried about all these. Animations. Fix some animation problems. Cool, great. Yep. Fix an issue with the Kisla's Frozen Falls quest battle. Fix an issue where Greasus over Tyrant's Crown could potentially be very problematic. Fix some other issues. Cool, great. AI. Ambushed armies that have retreated and are said to be wiped out if they retreat again can no longer attempt to withdraw. That's good. So the AI won't just like suicide itself. That's good. Fixed issues with some Chaos Warhound stuff. Fixed an issue where okay, this is good. Fixed an issue where large AI attacking armies on certain maps encounter challenges reforming. So now they will bypass the reform phase and just attack you. Fixed an issue where AI would remain idle during ambushes if the enemy was hidden. Fixed an issue where battle AI will now attempt to distribute its units across multiple targets so they're less likely to blob, which is going to be sad for people that really like cheesing, but good for people that like actually challenging AI, because those are two very different types of people. Fix an issue where AI would seem to idle when crossing a river, waiting for reinforcements. Now, when 95% of the units have crossed, they just continue to attack and don't worry about it. Dwarf Ancestor Gods, or Ghosts, rather, which, thank God, well, we do not have playable gods. Dwarf Ancestor Ghosts with shields now have 55% missile block chance. Alberic's Hippogriff Tempete now uses Bordello faction colors. Feral Ice Bears are now the appropriate size. Cool. Certain contact effects, such as those used by Skaven and Vampire Coast spells, were being applied despite the fact that you should be immune to them. That's been fixed. Leadership benefit from Encourage has been normalized to 4, regardless of whether it comes from characters or units. It used to be that characters only gave a +3 and units gave a +8. This reinstates an earlier improvement from Twisted and Twilight, so that's really good. So that makes that far more consistent. Quest ability Soul Binding is now correctly classified as a passive. The Doombringer's Warfire Throwers now have Scurry Away. Cool beans. Fix a manual order thing. The Witch Hunter for Wolfheart, Dr. Hertwig Van Hal, now benefits from the Tools of Judgment Grim Resolve skills. Very nice. Let's see. Collision boxes for steam tanks and lanchets have been improved, so now they can be hit in the rear properly. Fix an issue with that, with the Kepler Guard. Fix an issue with the Science of Mathlan. Let's see. Fix an issue with Iridescent Horrors. Golden Griffin Regiment of Renown now plays animations when casting certain spells. Let's see. Environment. Fixed all sorts of different things that were floating off the map, now being properly repaired. Cliff assets no longer leave in gaps. Cool. Players can now see the Quench contact effect from Soul Quench and the temporal effects. UI when applied. Cool. Just a lot of good fixes. Addressed an issue on the Galbaraz Conquest map multiplayer where water did not apply the shallow water terrain effect. Good. Fixed issue on various maps. Good. Miscellaneous. Improved wording of instructive tooltip and game settings for better clarity. Fixed an issue where Oxiodal could be dismembered. Oh no! Oxiodal, no! Okay, that's good. Let's see. Localization, so translation stuff. Multiplayer battles. Thank you to the multiplayer community who tries to help with things. They've added new unit caps. So there's a new unit cap called Single Entity Characters, Monsters, and War Machines. Okay, to try and make it where there's less cheesy single entity focused builds. That's good. Always a good fix to make multiplayer more balanced and enjoyable for all parties. Let's see. Corpse carts and single entity artillery were being particularly abusive. So that's good that they fixed that. For conquest mode, let's see. They've done some little things to tweak that a bit. All of the maps that were set up are now part of the ranked matchmaking pool, so it has a larger matchmaking pool now. Not much to talk about for domination, but they have added a new map, being the Hidden Oasis, to the matchmaking pool. Cool. Races and balance. Special thanks to Exalted Creators and Catholic Alcoholic and the team behind the community source peer-reviewed balance recommendations thread. Hey, good job, y'all. Good job. Big ups. Once again, we will check out the actual list of changes for individual stuff in just a minute. Complex stat changes. Okay, we already talked about Encourage. Let's see. So, Chariot mass. We've reviewed the mass of chariot type units across the game, placing each chariot into a specific weight bracket. We found chariot mass was very inconsistent, so their collision interaction should now be a bit more uniform and reliable. So now there are small chariots at 1,000 mass, which are chariots like the Goblin Wolf chariot. Medium chariots are at 1,500. Monstrous chariots are at 2,000. And then monstrous single entity are now at 3,000. The Chariot of the Gods now has 3,000 freaking mass. Okay, so that's good. So there's now a much more coherent, regulated system for that. That's very good. Flying charge speeds. We've addressed a bug where flying units could be observed slowing down when charging from a flying state to the ground. To resolve this issue, we've increased the charge bonus of most flying units to exceed their flight speed. Okay. As a result, flying units charging along the ground will now benefit from better impact. Okay, cool. I will say one issue that I've noticed that I don't think is addressed in this update, but I do hope it gets addressed at some point, is that I have noticed an issue where when units are told to pursue fleeing units, like to chase after fleeing units and run them down, they will often kind of move in slow motion, but I don't believe that's something that's been addressed just yet, but hopefully we'll keep an eye out for that. Known issues. Let's see. Units doctored to walls, which are particularly on a gatehouse, may have line of sight blocked. So watch out for that. Articulated vehicles, such as chariots, can be hit multiple times by projectiles, resulting in multiple forms or a doubling of damage. So watch out for that. All units that use the collision type capsule have a problem where missiles can pass through the top 5 to 10% of their collision box, deal no damage. Okay, so watch out for those. And then we'll be back soon with our next dev chat video about the DLC. So until then, we'll see you on the battlefield. Awesome. But we're not done yet. We are now going to head over to... I think it's this one. Yeah. All right. So, patch 5.3 battle balance details, which, to my understanding, a lot of people who have read through this post accidentally did not know that this was a thing. They skipped this post based on how I've seen people being like, they didn't do this thing over on Reddit. But let's dive into it. All right, so general things. Gotrek is now cheaper to take. Cool. Why not? Multiplayer. Beastmen, the Blood Booth Behemoth Gorgon, which affects actually quite a few different factions, now has 20 more armor. Very nice. Centaurs of Zinch are cheaper in multiplayer. That's terrifying, but okay. Let's see. Pestigors got some, pretty hefty debuffs on the Pestigors. More expensive in multiplayer. They have a bit less melee attack, much less armor. They lost 10 armor. Goodness, I did not think Pestigors were overperforming, but okay. Razorgore Chariots got some big fat buffs. Man. Yeah, so they've got 8 more base damage. They've got 8 more armor piercing damage, so that's plus 16 damage. Plus 1 bonus for his infantry. Bestigor Herds got buffed, which is pretty cool. Plus 4 charge bonus, plus 2 run speed, and plus 2 charge speed. So that's going to be really nice for the Bestigors. So they're going to be a lot more reliable at getting where you need them to go. Centaurs are a bit more expensive. Cygors now have a larger explosion radius on their shooting attack. Korok's Man Rippers now run faster to make them regular with the regular Bestigor herds. The Eye of Morslib got pretty solid buffs to his range damage. So just big increases to his damage. Significantly more armor piercing damage. He's got plus 24 AP on the actual missile and plus 15 armor piercing on the explosion. Good for him. Good for him. Bretonia, Grail Guardians lost about 400 health. Questing Knights, though, gained plus 2 damage. Royal Hippogriff Knights lost about 400 health. Peasant Mobs are a bit more expensive in multiplayer. Grail Knight lost about 500 health. And the Champions of Quenelles also gained plus 2 damage. So nothing like absolutely major. Like, even though they lost health, that's not an insane amount of health. Probably, it's just some slight balancing. Chaos Dwarves. Hobgoblin Wolf Raiders with bows now have 10 more range. That's nice, having a larger range to fire from. We also have Demon Smith Sorcerers a little cheaper. Lamassus of all types have 500 additional health. That's really cool. The regular Lamassu got plus 800 health, so tankier Lamassus. All Lamassus also have 25% base spell resistance, which is pretty cool. So they're more resistant to abilities and spells, which that'll be a nice change. That applies to all of them. So yeah, tankier Lamassus. Hobgoblin Archers also got plus range, which is good. Orc Laborers are cheaper in multiplayer. Kadai Destroyer now has collision attacks. That's excellent. So the Kadai Destroyer is going to be significantly more reliable at damaging, especially like large groups of infantry by just knocking people around. And then all of the Dreadquake Mortar variants are cheaper to take. Neat. Demons of Chaos. The Demons of Chaos, or the Demon Princes from the Warriors of Chaos, have arrived on the Demons of Chaos roster. So you, as the Demons of Chaos, now have access to the Demon Prince of Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch. So, I'm not sure if this is single player or multiplayer or both. So, I believe this is presumably just multiplayer, I think, but I will have to check. Demon Prince, there's been some confusion as to on the roster of why this very basic unit exists. Answer is that it represents the most basic form of the Demon Prince, and without it, players would not be able to load custom Daniels. So the basic bitch Demon Prince has also been moved to the extended roster, and it's cheaper to take. But the reason he's on the extended roster is because it allows people to port in their own custom Daniels. Cool. Arcalux, Prince of Fury is now on the extended roster and is cheaper, as well as Caress the Darkling Prince. Neat. Dark Elves, Doomfire Warlocks are cheaper to take in single player and multiplayer. Nice. Crone Hellebron is cheaper in both single player and multiplayer. Great. Same for all of her variants. Very cool. Bloodrack Shrine is cheaper in multiplayer and single player. Cool. Cold One Knights gained 500 health. Good for them. They lost 1 point of melee attack, but gained 2 points of melee defense. So Cold One Knights are going to be a fair bit tankier. K-Knight Assassin is cheaper in multiplayer. Scourge Runner Chariot Mounts now deal much more damage with their Harpoon Gunners to account for the fact that they're a single entity instead of a unit. That's good. Love it. Great. Cool. Dwarfs. Demon Slayer got -5 melee attack and melee defense, so making him a little bit less reliable in extended combat. Same thing for the Dragon Slayer. The Thunder Barge is more expensive in both single player and multiplayer. Bolt throwers. In order to account for the increased number of bolt throwers that we added to this unit previously, we've decreased the health of each individual bolt thrower, as well as reduced the amount of crew. The reload time of each bolt thrower has also been increased. I think that's totally fine. There are 8 of these fucking things. They were, to my understanding, they were overperforming quite a bit. So this is a good change. So there is now 8 less people per total. So there's 1 less crew per bolt thrower. The hit points of the bolt throwers themselves has also been reduced by almost 2,000. So about 1,600 less health. So the bolt throwers are more easily capable of being destroyed by spells and shooting attacks and stuff like that. And the reload time per bolt has been increased by 5 seconds. So that brings them more in line with what they were intended to be. Skulder Guard have a longer range. Rangers with great weapons are cheaper in all four in multiplayer and single player. Flame Cannons got a pretty big buff to their range, jumping up to 280 from 240, so that's a pretty notable increase on range. Thanes are a bit more expensive in multiplayer. Corlers with great weapons are cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Gyrocopters no longer have fire while moving. Okay, that's a pretty severe debuff for them, but to my understanding, they were grossly overperforming in multiplayer especially because they could just kite like crazy. Ammo of primary missile weapon has been reduced for this. I believe this is the steam gun version. So less ammo on the steam gun. Also, its melee damage has been reduced by 12 base and 4 AP. I think that's perfectly fine. They really should not have great melee stats, so that's fine. you don't want gyrocopters overperforming in melee. And then their explosion damage has also been debuffed by 2 base and 2 for AP. So they're a bit the steam guns are less good at dealing with like packed groups of infantry or enemies in general, which I think is fine because they that's kind of what you want your brimstone guns to focus more on. Brimstone guns got significantly more ammo, which is awesome because I always found that my brimstone guns ran out of ammo way too fucking fast. So they got plus 18. So they're now at 60 ammo, which is almost a third more. Actually, it's more like half more, or 50% more. Then they also got the melee damage debuff. Trollhammer torpedoes got plus 5 ammo. Awesome. So more trollhammers. And then debuffed melee damage. Cool. Gyro bombers no longer have firewall moving. That is unfortunate for the gyro bomber, but I think that's mostly just due to the fact that people were once again running really hardcore kiting builds in multiplayer. I think that's fine. Like, you know, if your goal is to use them while moving, that's what the bombs are for. And then they actually have pretty reasonable range and even suppression movement debuff when firing. So I don't really think they needed firewall moving, so that's fine. Then they fixed the missile block chance, or at least standardized it. The Empire, Demigriffs got plus 5 leadership and plus 500 health. Hey, good for Demigriffs. Demigriff Knights with Halberds got some way bigger buffs. Plus 500 health, plus 5 leadership, plus 4 melee defense, plus 2 armor piercing damage. And they're cheaper in both single player and multiplayer. Excellent. So the age of the Demigriff. The Royal Altdorf Griffites have more health, more leadership, more melee defense. 12 extra charge bonus, and they got Glorious Charge? Good God! Alright, so the Royal Altdorf Griffites got some really hefty bonuses when they're on the charge. Holy shit. Wow, that's scary. Let's see. The Stubborn Bulls got plus 2 base damage. Hertwig Van Hal got plus 5 armor. Archers now have a longer range, but they also have a larger calibration distance. So I believe this means they can shoot you from further away, but they're a little bit less accurate, if I recall correctly. Volkmar the Grim now has significantly more damage on the War Altar of Sigmar. He gained, oh my lord, he gained 70... Wait, is that right? Yeah, 75 base damage and doubled his armor piercing damage for 160. That is incredible. So he's going to be hitting much harder. The Tattersouls got plus 1 melee attack. Okay. Reichsguard are cheaper in both single player and multiplayer. Let's see. The steam tank can no longer fire its cannon in melee. That seems reasonable. So it's a bit less absurd when it's in a melee fight. It's also now possible to hit in the butt, which is cool. Landship can also no longer fire its cannon in melee. I think those are reasonable changes. The crew should be too busy trying to like defend from people like attacking it, doing boarding actions and stuff, and not just like casually firing their melee or ranged weapon. Let's see. For Grand Cathay, the Celestial General on Jade Longma now causes fear. Very nice. Astromancer on Moonbird is cheaper in both single player and multiplayer, as is the regular Great Moonbird. Very cool, very cool. The Jade Lion deals 20 more armor-piercing damage, as does the Jet Lion. So the constructs deal more damage, armor-piercing damage now. Cool, great, awesome. Greenskins. Grum the Paunch has had his damage ratios flipped, so he now deals significantly more AP damage, and AP is now his main damage, which is great, because, I mean, he kind of essentially wields a Great Axe, so that seems far more appropriate. So instead of dealing 290 base, 140 melee, he now deals 150 base and 320 AP. Okay, so Grom is going to be hitting way fucking harder. Though he does also have a higher splash attack knockback force multiplier, so he's more likely to toss around people that he's swinging at. The Rogue Idol now hits less people with his splash attacks, which means he's going to be dealing more. So when you deal, the higher your max entity hit by splash attack is, the less damage you functionally tend to do, because what it results in that, because you hit a bunch of other guys, it spreads out the damage more, so you're less likely to kill enemy entities. So in the vast majority of circumstances, the larger your max entity hit by splash attack is, the worse your damage is, like the worse your performance is. So this is a pretty good buff for the Rogue Idols. So the Rogue Idols are going to be more reliable at killing large groups of enemies. We also see that Dabiggin now has magical attacks. Cool, that makes sense. And the explosion radius from his shooting attack is now larger, so it's more deadly. The Feral Wyvern is significantly cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Good for that. The 8-peak Loonies are a little bit cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Skull Muncha is cheaper in multiplayer by a good amount, as is the generic Wyvern for the Orc War Boss. And Orc Boys are just a teeny tiny bit cheaper in single player and multiplayer. High Elves, Phoenix Guard are immune to psychology. That is a huge buff for Phoenix Guard. So Phoenix Guard no longer care about terror, so they'll no longer break from terror, which is awesome and makes 100% sense, and they should have had. I still am very much of the opinion that Trolls should also have immune to psychology, because Trolls had stupidity in tabletop, which means they were immune to psychology. So, and that was like the one upside to their crappy leadership, was that they didn't care about things like terror, because they were too stupid to care about things like terror. So I still am winging on about that, but I'm glad to see the Phoenix Guard got that buff. It's going to make them much more reliable, especially for what they're supposed to do. The Keepers of the Flame now have immunity to contact effects. Ooh, gross. Okay, so Keepers of the Flame are really, really nasty now, and just immune to all the things. Eltharion the Grim on Stormwing is cheaper in both single player and multiplayer. Teclis on the Arcane Phoenix got a little bit of a damage buff. I still hate that this is a thing and always will, but whatever, it is what it is. Rangers, High Elf Rangers got +2 base damage, +1 armor piercing damage, so a little bit more of a damage buff. Arcane Phoenix got all versions, okay, of the Arcane Phoenix got +20 AP. Okay, fine, cool. War Lions of Krace got +2 bonus versus infantry, as did the Regiment Renown version. Cool, so they're more reliable and deal more damage versus infantry groups. Lion Chariots of Krace got some pretty big damage upgrades. They got +8 base damage, +6 armor piercing damage. So it seems like pretty much universally Chariots are getting buffed. Turnok Chariot also got damage increase. Flamespire Phoenix got +20 base damage, +30 armor piercing damage. So Phoenixes are just flat out getting buffed. Frostheart Phoenix got +20 AP. Cool. Khorne. All versions of the Exalted Hero got -5 melee attack. The Herald of Khorne got +40 base damage, 85 armor piercing damage, -3 bonus versus infantry, and its max entities by splash attacks has been reduced from 8 to 4. So that's going to make the Blood Throne way stronger. Like, not only does it hit harder, a lot harder, but once again, less entities are being hit by splash attack, so it's far more reliable at killing entities. We see that is pretty much the same for the base Blood Throne and the Blood Reaper, where significant buffs to their damage output, and less spread on their attacks. So they're just going to be significantly more reliable at killing people in melee, which is what you want. Skull Cannon, gigantic melee buffs, plus 25 base damage, plus 100 armor piercing damage. Good lord. Also less max entities hit. Also the range attack is now significantly better. I actually saw a little thing about this, so now what the Skull Cannon does is when it shoots, instead of it like just penetrating through like a regular cannonball, now when it hits someone, it just like immediately blows up and turns into a stationary vortex. So think of it kind of like the Hashit, the Lore of Hashit spell, where they throw like the meteor, and when it impacts, it creates a small vortex. But this one stays in place and just deals damage to anyone standing on it, as it doesn't move around like the Hashit spell does. So this is like way better if you're aiming at someone that is trying to move through it or someone that's standing in it. So it's going to be absolutely brutal against infantry units, especially things like archers or ranged units that just kind of are standing and shooting. If you could shoot them and they end up just standing in the vortex, they're going to take significantly more damage. But that means it's going to be less good against things like cavalry, where you could shoot them and they can either like quickly retreat or turn to the side to get out of the vortex or just run through really fast. But if you're lucky, depending on how much damage it does, if it causes the cavalry to stagger as they're trying to move through it, because they're taking like pings of damage, then it will also be pretty good against them. So generally speaking, it's going to be more devastating against things that are light enough to get caught in that vortex. And it's going to be less good against things like monsters or heavy things that can just kind of run through it real fast. Yep, we already talked about that one. Gorebeast Chariots also getting plus bonuses to all forms of damage. So yeah, we're seeing this is going to be a pretty hefty patch for Chariots. Forsaken gaining about 600 health. That's really nice. Way tankier, Forsaken. Bloodthirsters, plus 20 armor piercing damage, plus 5 bonus versus large for all versions. Okay, so Bloodthirsters are going to be not only dealing quite a bit more damage, but also more reliable against large targets. That's good. Little disappointed not to see buffs for, I think, Juggernaut units. But maybe we'll see that with the DLC for Khorne stuff. Minotaurs of Khorne are cheaper in both single player and multiplayer. Cool. Kislev, Tsarina Katarin's Ice Sled is not quite as fast as it used to be. Kislevite Warriors are a bit more expensive in multiplayer. The Boydinov's Brawlers throughout the ROR. Oh, we're hitting multiple targets with their melee attacks. Okay, so that's been fixed. Frostworm has collision attacks. Hell yeah, so Frostworm's going to be better. It's a bit more expensive in multiplayer. As are the Things in the Woods with their ROR version. They're a bit more expensive in multiplayer only. Horse Archers are more expensive in multiplayer only. Dervishes are more expensive in multiplayer only. Heavy War Sleds are more expensive in multiplayer only, and they are now considered large entities, not very large, which means that their knockback performance should be more reliable, more accurate to what they look like they should be. They were overperforming on their knockback. Elemental Bear hits less splash attack, so it's going to be more reliable against large groups of enemies. And it also has collision attack, so Elemental Bear, very big buffs there. Oath Brothers of Tor are a little more expensive in multiplayer. We saw the same buffs for the Frozen Heart. Lizardmen. All Carnosaur and Ripperdactyl units and mounts now have Primal Instincts. Oh, that is a big, fat buff for Ripperdactyls and Carnosaurs. Hell yeah. Red-Crested Skinks are cheaper in both single player and multiplayer by a lot. got +1 melee defense, +4 charge bonus, +1 base attack, +2 armor piercing damage. Hey, fuck yeah, I'll take that. So all red crested skinks, including the Regiment of Renown, are not only much cheaper, but got some pretty nice stat buffs. Lord Croak and Gorok are cheaper in multiplayer. Cool. Nakai the one. Oh, look at this. Oh, I've been begging for this. I've been begging for this since he came out. Nakai now has the Woodsman attribute, and he gives all units in his army the Woodsman attribute in campaign. Fuck yes, that's amazing. So for those that don't know, Woodsman is, it basically means you ignore forest penalties, and you just ignore the forest. So it lets them move through trees, so they move much faster through the forest. And also for large entities, it means they ignore the penalties they would normally take for fighting in forest. Because normally, if a large entity is in a forest, it takes penalties to speed and melee attack. And it's a pretty hefty percentage. Nakai's Sacred Wanderer skill, which is, the Sacred Wanderer is at the end of his personal tree. So if you rush it, you get it at rank 14, I think. Now grants all units in his army Vanguard deployment. And Nakai has Vanguard deployment base. Hell yeah, Nakai! Oh my, and Nakai also causes Terror base. Oh my god, Nakai is gonna be so much better. Oh my god, Nakai is actually, oh look at him, he's really good now. He also got plus 10% missile resistance base. So he has 25% base missile resist. He has Vanguard deployment. He ignores any penalties caused by forests, and he causes terror. Hell yes. Oh, I'm so happy for Nakai. I'm so happy for Nakai. Great, excellent. Shredder of Lustria is more expensive, multiplayer single player. Skink Oracle's cheaper. Coatls. Oh, Coatls have collision attacks now. Ooh, that's cool. Okay, so collision attacks on the Coatl is excellent. They also hit less guys with their splash attacks, so once again, significantly better performing against groups of enemies. Feral Troglodon is cheaper in multiplayer, as is the ROR version. Krokgar on all mounts is pretty heftily cheaper in multiplayer. He got minus 200 cost on all versions, which is great. Source Old Blood also got minus 200 cost on all versions, which is great. Well, minus 150 when he's on his Carnosaur. Source Scar Veteran on Carnosaur is cheaper. Feral Carnosaur is cheaper. Okay, all the Carnosaurs are just cheaper. That's great. Excellent. Cool. Love it. Wolfric the Wanderer on the Mammoth is cheaper in single player and multiplayer. It also has slightly higher charge speed. Marauder Berserkers run a little faster and have higher charge bonus. Chaos Frost Dragon is cheaper in all forms and single player and multiplayer. Same for the Cold Voider. The Cold Voider also gained immunity to contact effects and frenzy. Ugh. Oh, excuse me. The Cold Voider is more expensive, but he gained frenzy and immunity to contact effects. Good. That's very nice. That's going to make that a lot more powerful. Feral Mammoth is cheaper in all forms for multiplayer and single player, including the War Mammoth and the War Shrine War Mammoth. Excellent. Feral Mammoth, Regiment of Renown, well, not Regiment of Renown, but campaign-specific version has a slightly tiny bit higher charge speed. Marauder Ice Wolf Chariots gained huge damage to their missile attacks, which I believe they have throwing axes. So they got plus 12 base damage and plus 40. So they doubled. They doubled both the missile base damage and the armor piercing missile damage. Awesome. Good for them. I will say, I really hope one day we get Sirtha Ek as like a unique, not a unique, but as a legendary lord, like just a fun bonus one. If we ever get Sirtha Ek as a playable legendary lord, he should get an Ice Wolf Chariot as his unique mount. Because currently, characters cannot actually run the Ice Wolf Chariot as a mount, and I think that would be really cool for him. Anyway, Marauders with great weapons are cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Brutes of the Hound also got bonuses to their charge bonus and plus 20 armor. So the Brutes of the Hound got way more armor. Soul Crusher Regiment of Renown for the War Mammoth is cheaper in both single player and multiplayer, also got slightly higher charge speed. And then some pretty hefty buffs to the unique characters you get from playing a Norska campaign. So the Nurgle Lord they get at the end of the Nurgle tree has 1,000 more health and also hits less entity with splash attacks. Kilgore Slaymane got huge buffs to his melee attack, melee defense charge bonus. Azric the Maze Keeper now has less missile resist, but actually gets physical resist now. So he's been standardized with other demons, which is good. And he also get bonus to damage. Nurgle! All Rot Beasts have significantly higher mass. So they're going to be way better. They're going to deal more damage on charges, and they're going to be way better at extracting themselves from melee fights, which is pretty awesome. Exalted Hero of Nurgle, all versions got a pretty hefty reduction to melee attack, -10 melee attack in all forms. Marauders of Nurgle and Chaos Warriors of Nurgle are cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Angels of Decay got double the charge bonus. Hell yeah, good for them. Rot Knights. Pretty giant buffs on the Rot Knights. +5 leadership, +20 armor. Wow, they're going to be way tankier and more durable. Oh my lord. And they got bigger mass, so they're going to be way better. And then the Regiment of Renown version is also much cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Kargon the Crazed got now has improved stats, so he's even better than an Exalted Hero. Case the Befouled now has larger mass. Tarmacon the Maggot Lord is cheaper in single player and multiplayer by a pretty good amount. And also turns significantly faster, so he has a much better turn speed. And then both him and the Toad Dragon, the generic Toad Dragon, have collision attacks now, so they're going to be much, much, much better. And they also hit less entities with their splash attacks, which means they're far more reliable for actually killing people instead of just damaging people. Pestigores are more expensive in multiplayer, but cheaper upkeep in single player. But they did lose melee attack and armor. I don't really feel like the Pestigores needed a debuff like an actual stat debuff, but maybe there's something I just don't know about them. All versions of Plague Drones and Rotflies have double charge bonus, so way nastier on the charge. And all Great Unclean Ones got +1,000 health and also hit significantly less entities with their splash attacks. So all Great Unclean Ones, including the Lord version, the ROR, are going to be much, much, much better at killing people, which is great. So buffs for Great Unclean Ones. Forsaken of Nurgle gained 700 plus health. Awesome. Good for them. Ogre Kingdoms didn't really get anything, but that's because a lot of their stuff is coming with the DLC. Greasus is cheaper in multiplayer and single player. Neat. Skaven. Oh, man. Ikit Claw and the Warlock Master on Doomflayer and Doomwheel have higher mass. They're more expensive. The Doomflayer, okay, I'll do these one at a time. Ikit Claw and Doomflayer, +1. Okay, I don't know why plus. That's odd. So they got slight buffs. They got +9 bonus versus infantry though, and his mass nearly doubled. Oh my gosh. So the Doomflayer is now 1,500 mass. The Doom Wheel is much more expensive, but got pretty fat damage buffs. So up from 112 to 160 for base damage, up from 211 to 265 on AP damage, and plus some mass. So Doom Wheel's way better for Ikit Claw. Same exact thing for the Warlock Master. So the Warlock Master's, the Doom Wheel in general is going to be much more dangerous. And the fucking Doomflayer mass change, that's huge. Blight Scab's Plague Pack, which is the Plague Monk Sensor Bearer ROR, got pretty hefty buffs to their melee attack and melee defense, +4 to both. Doomflayer Unit got -5 melee attack, -5 base damage, -10 armor piercing, but they got +9 bonus versus infantry and nearly doubled their mass. So that's interesting. So they're going to be less reliable against non-infantry units at dealing damage consistently, but on the charge and pulling themselves out of a prolonged fight, they're going to be significantly more dangerous. And against infantry, they're just going to be way better. So Doomflayers it seems like they're doing a better job specializing them as an anti-infantry thing. Also see all of those same buffs that we talked about earlier for the Doomwheel Regiment of Renown and the various named Doomflayer units. Throth the Unclean is cheaper in multiplayer and single player, both on foot and on his mount. Mutant Rat Ogres now hit much less people with their splash attack, so they're going to be far more reliable. The base Doom Wheel also got the big damage buffs we talked about, and the regular Plague Monk Censer Bearers also gained +3 melee attack and +3 melee defense. Okay, awesome. So pretty notable, pretty nice buffs for the Skaven overall, for Clan Pestilence and Clan Scryer. Slaanesh, all Chariots, much stronger. Oh my gosh. So Heart Seekers of Slaanesh, which not a chariot, but Heart Seekers got +4 charge bonus, +2 melee, or +2 base damage, +4 armor piercing. That's excellent. Hell Striders are cheaper in both single player and multiplayer. Aluris on Chariot got insane buffs. Holy shit. +55 base damage, +160 armor piercing, +3 bonus versus infantry. That's insane. The Exalted Seeker Chariot got +60 base damage and +95 armor piercing damage. Incredible. Also hits significantly less max entities with splash attack, so way better at killing people instead of just spreading damage around. Exalted, Keepers of Secrets got big buffs. So Exalted Keeper of Secrets got +30 charge bonus, +20 base damage, +40 armor piercing damage, and hits significantly less entities with splash attack. So once again, way better at killing people in large fights. Herald of Slaanesh on Chariots got the same buffs we talked about earlier. Nakai got +35 charge bonus, +10 base damage, +30 armor piercing, and less entities hit. So once again, Nakai is going to be significantly better against groups of enemies. Forsaken of Slaanesh got about 600 extra health. Fiends of Slaanesh lost about 800 health. Okay, so Fiends of Slaanesh got debuffed a bit. Regular Keeper of Secrets, +25 charge bonus, +10 base damage, +20 armor piercing damage, and once again, less entities hit with splash. Awesome. Very good changes. The basic Exalted Seeker Chariot got +60 damage, +100 armor piercing damage, and less entities hit with splash attacks. Awesome buff. Hellflare Chariot, +10 charge, +2 base damage, +5 armor piercing damage, +2 bonus versus infantry, and very few. They went from 6 max entities hit by splash down to 2. So once again, vast improvement at actually killing people rather than just dealing distributed damage, which is going to be big buffs. Seeker Chariot just got +10 charge, which is certainly not bad. And then the Regiment of Renown for the Heartseeker Chariot and Marquis of Masochism got the same buffs we talked about earlier. Awesome. Excellent. Slaanesh is eating good. Well, no, just Chariots. Well, I mean, the Keeper of Secrets as well. But, oh my god, this is like the Chariot patch. Which is crazy, because we already had a really big Chariot patch a little while ago. Cetra the Imperishable. Oh boy. Chariot of the Gods now causes terror base. That's very good. That's going to bring it far more in line with being like an actual competitor with the War Sphinx. Also, its mass, as we talked about earlier, is now the maximum for Chariots, which is crazy. +10 base damage, +20 armor piercing damage, +5 bonus versus infantry. So the Chariot of the Gods, even more powerful. Awesome. Archon the Black's Crypt Ghouls are more expensive in multiplayer, but they gained about 700 health. Okay, and +20 armor. Okay, so Crypt Ghouls got some Aether Wheaties, apparently. Let's see. Carrion are cheaper in multiplayer. Let's see. Eyes of the Desert Sepulchral Stalkers are more expensive in multiplayer, as are the Chosen of the Gods Ushapti. Only a little bit more expensive, though. Skeleton Archer Chariots got +2 base missile damage and +2 armor piercing missile damage, so they deal a bit more damage now. And then Hex Rays for Archon the Black got +10 leadership, +7 melee defense. Okay, pretty big changes there. Tzeentch, the Exalted Lord of Change, got significantly reduced price for multiplayer. Also hits less max entities, so once again, more reliable damage. Centaurs of Tzeentch, which we talked about for the Beastmen, I believe are cheaper, but for Tzeentch are now significantly more expensive in single player and multiplayer. Forsaken of Tzeentch also got the +600 health. Heralds of all versions of the Burning Chariot, whether it's the mount or the unit variant, got plus mass, hits significantly less max entities with splash attacks, which once again, always a great buff. They also all got pretty good bonuses, plus 10 armor piercing damage, plus 10 regular damage, and they're cheaper in single player and multiplayer. We also see that the base version of the Burning Chariot, so the non-character version, also gained plus 1 melee attack, plus 5 melee defense, plus 5 charge bonus as well. So really nice combat buffs for the Burning Chariot. Vampire Coast. The Carronade and the Mortar got plus 10 leadership, so they're significantly less likely to start crumbling when taking damage. Queen Bess got some pretty hefty buffs. So Queen Bess, Queen Bess got some interesting changes. So not only it got plus 10 leadership, once again makes it significantly more resistant to crumbling. It gained twice as much armor, so Queen Bess is going up from 15 armor to 30, so it's going to take a good bit less damage from non-armor piercing damage. But here's what's really interesting. So the crew of Queen Bess lost quite a bit of health. So they're going from 145 health per guy to 100. But that's not a big deal because the vast way most people would deal with Queen Bess is they just attack the war machine itself and kill it really, really fast. But Queen Bess has now 800 more health. So the actual entity of Queen Bess gained about 50%, a little over 50% more health. So it's going to be quite a bit more durable when it's being like shot at with spells and cannon fire and stuff like that. I don't know if that's going to be enough to make Queen Bess like great, but it's certainly going to be much more survivable. Now, what's interesting is that it's more vulnerable to melee. So like if a little unit of Chaos Warhounds or something gets on it, it's more likely for the crew to be killed because they have significantly less health, but they also have more armor and more leadership. So RNS Assault Spine, all versions got plus 10 base damage, plus 20 AP. Syrenes got plus 5 leadership. Tide of Skjold is less expensive in multiplayer and single player. Fellbats are less expensive in multiplayer. Cool. Vampire Counts. All versions of the Zombie Dragon mount got plus 300 health. The Chillgeist got plus 10 leadership. Varix Reavers got plus 8 charge bonus. Helman Gorst on his cart is cheaper in multiplayer. All versions of the Mortis engine now have notably higher mass. So the Mortis engine is going to be more devastating on the charge. It is also going to be much better at extracting itself from melee. All the ethereal units got way more leadership. Hex rates plus 10, Banshee plus 10, Cairn rates plus 5. So all of your ghost units are going to be far more reliable at not crumbling. Crypt Ghouls are more expensive in single player and multiplayer, but they gain 700 health and plus 20 armor. Great. So Crypt Ghouls are now significantly more survivable. Skeleton Spearmen are now cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Fellbats are cheaper in multiplayer. Black Coach got some huge buffs. Absolutely massive buffs on the Black Coach. So it has Flaming Attacks base, plus 10 leadership. It has the Strider passive now. So note, it doesn't take any penalties from terrain or anything. It also gained plus 30 base damage, plus 30 armor piercing damage, hits significantly less, hits more entities with splash attacks. So it's less good at killing people, but better at dealing damage spread across more entities. However, the huge buff for the Black Coach is that all of its abilities that it used to build up by killing people are now treated like the War Shrine of Chaos, where now it's about people killed around it instead of the entities that it killed. So your Black Coach is going to have such a much easier time building up all of its abilities to get to like maximum power. So that's huge. Great buff. Warriors of Chaos. Sartorial the Everwatcher is more expensive in multiplayer, but he gained 1,000 health, 10 leadership, 11 melee attack, 11 melee defense, 5 charge bonus, 10 armor, 20 damage, 30 armor piercing damage, hits less entities with his splash attacks, and he also gained a unique item for, well, not unique in like he gained an item for multiplayer called the Rock of Inevitability. So Sarthoria the Everwatcher, some pretty significant buffs. Kolek Suneater now has magic attacks. Nice. The Chaos Giant Regiment of Renown is cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Gorby's Chariots deal 8 more AP damage, 8 more regular damage, so buffs for the Gorbies. Marauders with Great Weapons are cheaper in all forms for single player and multiplayer. Chaos Warriors with Great Weapons, cheaper in single player and multiplayer. Exalted Hero on Foot and Chaos Steed got -5 melee attack. Forsaken, once again, plus 600 health. Demon Spew plus 720 health. Okay, damn. Wood Elves. Ariel now plays her actual animations when using the Dart of Doom ability. She also leaves behind an effect wherever she goes on the battlefield, so she leaves behind butterflies and flowers. Ooh, cute. Coadil got plus 1,000 health, plus 30 base damage, plus 40 armor-piercing damage. Okay, so we're seeing that for all the Treemen. So the Ancient Treeman, Malevolent Ancient Treeman, Coadil, Durthu, but not the regular Treeman. Okay, so the Ancient Treeman... Oh, no, the regular Treeman as well. So all forms of Treemen got additional melee attack, base damage, and arm-piercing damage. So just buffs for Treemen. Cave Bats are cheaper in multiplayer. Durthu is also cheaper in multiplayer, but... Durthu is more expensive in multiplayer and single player, but he also gained 1,000 health, plus 8 melee defense. Okay. Sure. Plus 30 base damage, plus 40 armor piercing. Damn. All right, Durthu. Deepwood Scouts with Swift Shiver Shards are more expensive in single player and multiplayer. Wildwood Rangers got a pretty significant buff. Plus 8 melee attack, plus 1 damage, -1 armor piercing damage. But they have Vanguard deployment and Stalk, which is crazy. So... that is, the fact that they have Vanguard is nice, but Stalk is incredibly good on an elite melee. Oh, sorry, I was wrong about the melee attack. They lost 8 melee attack. So their base stat line is not quite as good, but they gained fucking Stalk and Vanguard and 14 bonus versus infantry. Holy shit. Wildwood Rangers are like going to be an S tier flanking unit now. Also, the Guardians of the Wood ability has been reworked. Previously, it granted an anti-large bonus if you were in a forest. However, now it grants general melee stats near terror causers. Okay, so it's a significantly more actually usable ability. Because the old ability was stupid. Like, having to be used in the forest meant you never got to use it. Wardens of Sithral Wildwood Rangers gained 10 melee defense. Damn. Plus 5 bonus versus large, putting them at 20 bonus versus large, but they lost 17 base melee attack, so more specialized. Wild Hunters of Kurnos, ROR, is more expensive in single player multiplayer. Cool. Abilities. Oh my god, so many spells. Let's see. Usurian's Incantation of Vengeance is 1 point more expensive to cast. Kraken's Pull is cheaper to cast, both upgraded and non. Dreaded 13th spell has a shorter range to cast from. Flensing Ruin is more expensive to cast in both versions. Black Whirlwind is cheaper, both versions. Mantle of Gorok upgraded is cheaper by 2 points, which is pretty good. Arcane Unforging is -2 for both versions to cast. Awesome. Fiery Convocation is cheaper to cast both versions. Tempest upgraded is 1 point cheaper. Curse of Hashut, both versions, is cheaper to cast. Hellhammer, both versions, is cheaper to cast. The Maw, both versions, is cheaper to cast. Toothcracker is cheaper to cast, both versions. Curse of the Leper is cheaper to cast, both versions. Giant debuff for Fleshy Abundance. Ooh, boy. So Fleshy Abundance upgraded, which is the AoE version, now can only target a maximum of 4 people instead of everybody. So that's a pretty huge debuff for Fleshy Abundance, which is the Nurgle spell. Hysterical Frenzy from Slanesh now lasts 6 seconds longer and grants an additional 25% bonus base damage. So that's nice buff. Pretty big buff, actually, for Slanesh for Hysterical Frenzy. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's the one that's an augment. So if it's an augment, that's a pretty good buff. Pavan of Slanesh is more expensive in single player and multiplayer. Both versions to cast. Glean Magic, Glean Magic is more expensive to cast, but god damn. Glean Magic gives enemies silenced and plus 15% spell mastery for the wizard. So Glean Magic is awesome. Now that is so good versus characters. Holy shit. Let's see. Might of Heaven and Earth is cheaper both versions. Talons of Night is cheaper both versions. That's actually kind of interesting. Transformation of Caden got -2 Winds of Magic costs. Savage Dominion is -3. I still think Savage Dominion and Transformation of Caden should both get overcast versions, but especially Savage Dominion. Savage Dominion should be able to be overcast, and it gives you a Gorgon. Like that, I think that would be easy. Vile Tide is notably cheaper, both versions. Gaze of Nagash is one more expensive. The regrowth spell, the vigor per second healing, is not as good as it used to be, so it gives you less vigor per second back. Soul Blight is cheaper to cast. Piercing Bolts of Burning is cheaper to cast. Wind Blast deals more base damage, and the upgraded version deals more armor piercing damage, so Wind Blast buff. Banishment is significantly cheaper to cast, both versions. Night Shroud is significantly cheaper to cast, both versions. Gehenna's Golden Hounds from the Lore of Metal has been changed. Oh, okay, interesting. So Gehenna's Golden Hounds used to travel in a vaguely straight line, so it was not... So when you would cast it, it would kind of wander off in a particular direction. Now, however, when it's changing directions every second, it can change to any direction in 360 degrees instead of just like a 90-degree arc. So now Gehenna's Golden Hounds is far more likely to stay in the area you cast it in instead of just wandering really far off. Glittering Robe, both versions, is cheaper. Oh, Curse of Years got buffed. Hell yeah. So Curse of Years now applies silence to all enemies in the AoE. And it doesn't cost anymore. That's good. Wow, Curse of Years might actually be like a pretty decent spell now. Silent? Wow, that's a giant silence. Like, Curse of Years is a big AoE spell, and silence is not to be fucked around with. I think that's pretty good. Gaze of Nagash is more expensive, both versions. And we already talked about Enfeebling Foe for the Shukugan. Unit abilities. The Blazing Body buff you see on a lot, or ability you see on a lot of the Chaos Dwarf units now requires less time spent in melee to charge up. So now it's only 240 seconds. I think it used to be like 360. So it's cheaper. The Shield of Chukwa item. Shield of Chukwa. I'm trying to remember who has that. That's from that's from the Saurus Spear Regiment of Renown. The effect range is now 55 meters instead of 35. That's a great buff. The Omen of Hope, which is the Phoenix Regiment of Renown, now has vigor per second recovery. That's awesome. I believe that's an AoE effect. So that's really, really good. So it makes people heal vigor. Wake of Fire deals -28 base damage, but plus 30 armor piercing damage. So the Phoenix drop bomb ability is going to be way stronger. Way stronger. Oh my god, that's going to be way stronger. So Phoenixes are going to be way better at damaging heavily armored groups of enemies. Giver of Furious Glory. I don't remember what that is off the top of my head. I want to say that is some kind of War Shrine ability. Now gives a ward save. That's really good. 15%. The regular Giver of Glory, so not Giver of Furious Glory, but regular Giver of Glory, now gives Vigor Healing. Cool. Dark Renown, which is Drazoth's ability, his buff ability, now has a 55 meter radius instead of only 35, so it's way better. And it also can target Drazoth himself, so he actually benefits from it. Killing Fire ability deals twice as much direct damage. Cool. Aura of Agony and Aura of Ardor, which, if I recall correctly, is the buff from the Bloodrack Medusa Shrine, is now always active instead of requiring you to be in melee. That's a really good change. Because the Bloodrack Medusa Shrine, like the Bloodrack Medusa has a shooting attack, and you really want to make good use of it. So now her aura does not require you to be in melee, so she can now be a second line unit that is more support, that is giving that AoE buff and debuff, and also is able to shoot. So that's really, really good. Sour Discharge now deals significantly less, way less armor piercing damage, but now deals 34 base damage instead of 0. However, its overall damage has been significantly reduced. I want to say Sour Discharge is, I don't remember exactly who has that, but I think it's from one of the Nurgle units that like explodes when it dies. The Dwarf Rum ability on the Regiment of Renowned Dwarf Slayer Pirates is debuffed pretty heavily. It used to give minus 10 melee attack, now it only gives minus 5. Flame Incarnate, as the ability used to have only 2 uses, now it has an infinite number of uses. Neat. So pretty hefty buff for all of the demon characters. So the demon characters all have abilities called Locus. So like Locus of Fury, Locus of Beguilement, whatever. And it's for all of the heralds and all of the heroes for the demons. All of their effect radius, if they had an effect radius, is now 55 meters instead of 35. So significant buff for all of the demon characters, which is all the herald tier demon characters, which is really, really good. It makes their debuffs and buffs just significantly more reliable. Arrow of Kurnos now has reduced penetration. That's good. That ability was fucking ridiculous. Hounds of Orion got the same changes again as Golden Hounds. Guardians of the Wildwood, as far as what it actually does. So now, if there's a terror-causing unit within 55 meters, you gain plus 25% base damage, plus 25% armor-piercing damage, and plus 10 melee attack. So that actually buffs them up significantly above where they were, even with the melee attack debuff they got to their base profile. So Guardians of the Wildwood are just better significantly, because once again, they have fucking Vanguard and Stalk. But now if they're near a Terror Causer, they are incredible. So that's awesome. That's very, very exciting buff for them. Rune of Hearth and Home gives less vigor healing. Black Nimbus, which is these 3 abilities are all from the fucking what do you call it? Black Coach. Oh, interesting. The Black Scythe buff now also gives a buff to base weapon damage in addition to what it already does. So that's really good. Arc of Sotek, Jungle Swarm, and Sotek Sanctum. So all of the Snake Swarm abilities now deal their damage via a stationary vortex rather than a contact effect. So the contact effect, Sotek's Poison, has now been changed to where it does the exact same thing as Poison, but it's applied separately. Whoa, that's really cool. Okay, so that overall is a buff. So now, if you use any ability that would inflict the the Swarm ability, it doubles the effect of Poison functionally, and it also drops a vortex on the ground that deals the damage. So it is a slight debuff to the ability in that the old ability used to just keep reapplying a damage over time ability. So even if you like barely touched a unit with it, they would take a significant amount of damage. Now it no longer does that. So it's a little less good at dealing lots of damage to lots of enemies. However, because it's a vortex ability, it also means that you can get significantly more damage if you actually like really catch a unit in it. Changes to items. Tehenuin's Blade of the Serpent's Tongue now has a 55 meter radius and grants a plus 20% charge bonus instead of 10%. Damn. The Shield of Eon. Oh my god. Gorok just got way fucking scarier. So Gorok, who I'll remind you is now cheaper in single player and multiplayer, his Shield of Eons now has a 55 meter radius. In addition to all of the other buffs it gives Charge Reflect. So if Gorok and his army, like if you charge at Gorok and he activates the Shield of Eons and you hit him with a charge, he's now going to bounce a bunch of that damage back at you. That's amazing. The Mace of Ulamak on Gorok now gives the Dazed debuff effect. Awesome. Acorn of the Oak of Ages on Ariel now deals twice as much armor-piercing damage on its Vortex. Hell yeah. The Dart of Doom for her. Oh, interesting. The Dart of Doom got a pretty significant buff. So it now costs a second to cast because it has an actual wind-up animation now instead of instantly casting. It deals 0 base damage, but now deals 500 armor-piercing damage. And has 0 explosion-based damage, but deals 100 armor-piercing explosion. So it's pure AP damage. and it now can penetrate multiple small entities. So that's a huge buff. So not only is the Dart of Doom pure AP now, but that means that when you cast it, it'll pierce through several guys before it explodes. So it'll actually pierce into the center of a formation and then blow up, which is overall just going to make it significantly better. The Wintertooth Crown on Throg is now a 55-meter radius effect. It also gives 24 melee defense. That is so much better. That is so much better for Throg. Because it used to be it just made you unbreakable, which, like, that's... Unbreakable is one of those things where it's good in theory, but if it's a temporary effect, you have to be really, really on the draw on how you apply it, because otherwise it's useless. Because if you use it too late and the enemy and the unit you're trying to make unbreakable is already running away, being unbreakable does not make them rally. They just keep running. Whereas if you do it too early, then obviously it just doesn't do anything. But now the Wintertooth Crown also gives plus 24 melee defense, so now it's good in even without the unbreakable, which is nice. And then the Flaming Axe of Cormac item ability also gives 30% armor piercing, 30% bonus AP damage. Awesome. Great. Excellent. All right. So that is it for patch 5.3. Pretty gigantic patch. Absolutely massive. Significant buffs to Chariots. Nakai the Wanderer just got way better and actually has like a really cool gimmick in that he makes all of the units in his army have Woodsman and Vanguard deployment, which is going to make him like the GOAT at having like a big monster Kroxgor army because he lets them all ignore forest penalties and also deploy right in front of the enemy. So I'm very happy for Nakai. Yeah, a lot of really, really good buffs. I'm actually really excited about the Wood Elf buffs too for the Guardians of the Forest, or the Wildwood Rangers. So yeah, awesome. Please let me know what y'all think down in the comment section. I would love to hear your thoughts about like what changes you're the most excited about. If there's anything that you've been really pining for or pushing for that was not included, I would really love to hear that as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.